Welcome back to Stamps Old World UK, the channel where we explore the rich and fascinating world of vintage postage stamps from across the globe. In today's in-depth episode, we are going to take a close look at one of the most iconic and visually striking American stamps ever issued, the 50-cent Benjamin Franklin stamp, printed in a vivid shade of violet or purple. This stamp, with its classical design and historical significance, has captivated collectors for generations. But the big question remains, how much is this stamp worth in today's collector's market? Let's take a journey through its history, rarity, and current value to find out. The 50-cent Benjamin Franklin stamp belongs to a long line of U.S. postage stamps that feature the likeness of Franklin, one of the founding fathers of the United States, a statesman, inventor, and the very first Postmaster General of the United States. The design of this particular stamp, with Franklin facing left and surrounded by an ornate frame, was first introduced in the early 20th century as part of the Washington Franklin series. These stamps were issued between 1908 and 1922 and are notable for their high-quality engraving, perforations, and multiple variations that included watermarks, printing types, and color changes. The 50-cent denomination was used primarily for heavier mail or for international letters, which means it was printed in relatively lower quantities compared to lower-value stamps used more commonly. One of the reasons this stamp has become so prized among philatelists is its design complexity and the possibility of hidden rarities. Some examples of this stamp were printed on watermarked paper, while others were not. There are flat plate printings, rotary press printings, and different types of perforations, such as 10-gauge and 11-gauge. Additionally, color varieties like shades of purple, reddish-violet, and slate can command vastly different prices depending on how well preserved the stamp is. A stamp that might look ordinary at first glance could actually be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars if it turns out to be a rarer printing type. Now, let's talk about condition. As with most collectible stamps, condition plays a major role in determining market value. A stamp that is in mint condition, meaning it has never been used, has original gum on the back, and is free from tears, creases, or fading, is significantly more valuable than a used example. Centering also matters. The more symmetrical the design is within the borders of the stamp, the higher the value it tends to fetch. A perfectly centered 50-cent Franklin stamp with fresh color and sharp perforations can bring in impressive bids at auction. So, what is the current market value of the 50-cent Benjamin Franklin stamp today in dollars? As of mid-2025, prices can range widely depending on all the factors we just discussed. A used example in average condition may sell for around $50 to $150. However, if the stamp is in very fine or extremely fine condition, used stamps can command $300 to $700 or more. A mint-hinged version, meaning the gum is intact but has been slightly disturbed from a hinge, can bring anywhere from $750 to $1,500. But the real prize is a mint never-hinged specimen with exceptional centering and vivid color, which can easily sell for $300 to over $1,000 depending on the variety and demand. One notable sale that caught the attention of collectors was a 50-cent Franklin stamp in mint never-hinged condition with an exceptional grade for centering. That stamp sold for over $1,500 at auction. This shows that high-grade versions of this stamp are truly sought after by elite collectors, and prices have steadily risen over the past 2 decades due to increased interest in classic American philately. It's also worth noting that error stamps or unique variations, such as color misprints, inverted watermarks, or rare perforation types, can skyrocket in value if authenticated by professional grading services. Another interesting element of the stamp market today is the growing demand from international collectors. As stamp collecting becomes more accessible through online platforms and global auctions, collectors from Europe, Asia, and even Africa are beginning to show interest in classic American stamps like the Benjamin Franklin series. This has helped push prices higher, especially for well-preserved and certified examples. That means if you happen to own a 50-cent Franklin stamp in high grade, the market in 2025 is in your favor. Now could be the right time to have it appraised and possibly listed for sale. But it's not just about the money. The true value of a stamp like the 50-cent Benjamin Franklin goes beyond dollars and cents. It's a piece of history, a snapshot of early 20th century American life, and a tribute to one of the world's most influential figures. It connects generations of collectors and tells a story that transcends borders. Whether you've inherited this stamp from a relative or discovered it in an old album tucked away in an attic, it deserves attention, respect, and maybe even a place of honor in your personal collection. Before we conclude, let me give you a few quick tips if you think you might have this stamp in your possession. First, use a magnifying glass or stamp loupe to examine the design details, watermark, if any, and perforation size. Second, compare your stamp to verified catalog images or consult a professional stamp dealer. Third, always store your valuable stamps in a dry, cool environment inside protective mounts or albums to prevent damage. And finally, consider getting your stamp professionally graded if it appears to be in excellent condition. This can dramatically increase its resale value. At Stamps Old World UK, we are passionate about helping collectors understand the true worth and wonder of their stamp collections. If you found this video helpful, or if you have a 50-cent Benjamin Franklin stamp and want to know more about it, drop a comment below and share your story. We'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. We cover everything from rare British penny blacks to early American classics and everything in between. Join us on this timeless journey through Philately, and together, let's uncover the hidden treasures of the stamp world. Next up, the 50-cent Susan B. Anthony stamp. This is not just a beautiful piece of printed paper, it is a tribute to a woman who helped shape the future of women's rights and civil liberties in the United States. But beyond its historical significance, collectors across the world are asking, what is the current market value of this stamp today in dollars? Let's take a deep look into its story, collectability, and modern value in the stamp market of 2025. The 50-cent Susan B. Anthony stamp was first issued by the United States Postal Service in 1936, during a time when commemorative stamps were used to honor key historical figures and events that defined the nation's legacy. Susan B. Anthony was a pioneering advocate for women's suffrage, and her image on a U.S. postage stamp was a powerful statement of recognition and respect. The stamp itself features a finely engraved portrait of Anthony, set against a deep violet background, with her name proudly inscribed to the left of her likeness and the denomination boldly displayed in the lower right corner. It was part of the presidential series of stamps, often referred to by collectors as the Prexies, though this stamp was released independently as a tribute to her work. The production quality of this stamp was excellent for its time, and its deep purple color, classic typeface, and formal portrait give it a timeless and elegant appearance. It was printed using engraved intaglio techniques, which give the stamp a raised texture and fine detailing that is highly appreciated by philatelists. The perforation gauge, paper quality, and gum type can vary slightly depending on the print run, but in general, the stamp is regarded as a well-made and durable issue. Despite its relatively high face value of 50 cents at the time, which was typically used for heavier mail or special delivery, this stamp was widely distributed and used across the country. When we talk about stamp values today in the collector's market, we must always consider a few key factors: condition, rarity, demand, and provenance. The Susan B. Anthony stamp is not especially rare in the general sense. Millions were printed and many have survived, both used and unused. However, this does not mean they hold no value. In fact, due to increasing interest in feminist history, women in politics, and historical Americana, this stamp has seen a steady rise in collector demand, particularly among thematic collectors who focus on women's suffrage, human rights, or historical portraits. As of 2025, the value of a Susan B. Anthony 50-cent stamp depends significantly on condition. A used example in average condition may sell for around 25 to 50 cents, primarily because it has been postmarked and shows signs of wear. However, well-centered used stamps with light cancellations can fetch slightly higher prices, sometimes up to $100 or more from thematic collectors. The real value lies in mint condition versions. A mint-hinged stamp, where the gum on the back is intact but shows slight marks from previous album mounting, may sell for between $200 and $500. A mint never-hinged example, meaning it has never been mounted and has full original gum, can command anywhere from $500 to $1,500 or more, especially if it is in very fine to extremely fine condition. High-grade specimens with expert certification and perfectly centered printing are even more desirable. In philately, centering is crucial. A perfectly centered Susan B. Anthony stamp, with wide and even margins all around, clean perforations, and rich color, can sell for upwards of $250 or more. In rare cases, plate blocks, sets of 4 or more stamps connected together with the original printer's margin, can fetch $500 to $1,000, particularly if they are in pristine condition. Full sheets of this stamp are also collectible and can reach several $100s depending on condition, demand, and whether they include any notable plate markings or printing anomalies. Another point worth mentioning is that the Susan B. Anthony stamp also plays an important role in educational displays and exhibits. Many schools, libraries, and historical museums collect and display this stamp as a visual representation of the fight for equality and the importance of civic reform in American history. This has contributed to a slow but steady increase in value, as more people outside the traditional stamp collecting world recognize the cultural significance of this issue. In this way, the 50-cent Susan B. Anthony stamp stands out not only as a philatelic item but also as an enduring symbol of social progress. Collectors today are increasingly looking for stamps that have both monetary and historical value. The Susan B. Anthony stamp delivers on both fronts. While it may not command thousands of dollars like some rare errors or limited-run classics, its importance and growing interest from diverse collector bases mean that prices will likely continue to rise. If you have this stamp in your collection, it is worth preserving carefully. Always store it in a protective sleeve or album, away from moisture and sunlight. If you suspect your copy may be especially well preserved or from a unique print run, consider getting it evaluated by a professional philatelic grading service. At Stamps Old World UK, we believe that every stamp tells a story, and this one tells a story of courage, perseverance, and transformation. Susan B. Anthony dedicated her life to the fight for women's rights, and her presence on a U.S. postage stamp ensures that her legacy endures with every envelope she graced. This is not just a collectible. It's a tribute to an icon. And whether you are a seasoned collector or someone just discovering the world of stamps, owning this stamp is like holding a piece of history in your hands. Next up, the 50-cent blue Benjamin Franklin stamp. Its bold blue color, classic portrait style, and timeless design have made it a standout among American philately. But just how much is this particular Franklin stamp worth in today's collector's market? What factors influence its value? And how can you know if your stamp is just a common collectible or a hidden gem worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars? Stay with us as we explore the full story, the market trends, and the true value of this magnificent piece of American postal history. Benjamin Franklin, the man featured on this 50-cent stamp, is more than just a historical figure. He is a cornerstone of American innovation, diplomacy, and communication. As the very first Postmaster General of the United States, Franklin played a critical role in organizing and shaping what would become the United States Postal Service. His work helped build the infrastructure of communication across the fledgling nation, and his image on U.S. postage stamps is both fitting and frequent. However, the blue 50-cent stamp version, particularly this modern reproduction with the simple U.S. Post Office title above and 50 clearly displayed at the bottom, is a nostalgic homage to the earliest designs of American postage, most notably the 1847 Franklin issues. Now, while this blue stamp may look like an ancient relic from the 19th century at first glance, it is actually a modern commemorative or reprint design. Some versions of this blue 50-cent Franklin stamp were issued as part of promotional items, souvenir sheets, collector packs, or postal anniversary celebrations. They are often referred to by philatelists as facsimile stamps or poster-style stamps because they resemble historic issues but were not always intended for regular mail service. However, some were legitimately issued in official U.S. postal programs, especially during the late 20th century, making them valid postage at the time, though not often used due to their high denomination. Because of their origins, these stamps have become collectibles based more on historical tribute and aesthetic appeal than rarity alone. One of the most fascinating things about this particular design is its simplicity and boldness. Unlike the heavily engraved designs of earlier Franklin issues from the Washington Franklin era, this version uses a much more modern print process with a cleaner blue background, sharp white frame, and a centered, forward-facing image of Franklin. The typography is crisp, the denomination is centered within a banner box, and the words, U.S. Post Office, curve across the top like a grand archway. It is visually attractive, historically themed, and easy to identify, all things that make it appealing for beginner and thematic collectors alike. The blue tone itself is another attraction, vibrant, striking, and symbolic of tradition, leadership, and trust. So let us now turn to the topic that every stamp enthusiast wants to know: what is this 50-cent blue Benjamin Franklin stamp worth in dollars on today's market in 2025? The answer, as with most collectible stamps, depends on several important factors including the specific version, year of issue, print quantity, condition, and whether it has any errors or varieties. In general, common and used modern reprint versions of this stamp are valued at approximately $1 to $3, especially if sold as singles in mint condition. These are the versions that were widely sold in postal souvenir packets or collector's editions, often found in albums that were issued between the 1970s and 1990s. However, things become much more interesting when we start considering rarer or limited edition releases of this design. Some issues came as part of limited-run philatelic exhibitions or were printed using special processes like die-cut formats, imperforate edges, or unique paper types. If your stamp is one of these rarities, it could be worth significantly more, sometimes $10 to $25 or higher depending on demand. Additionally, full souvenir sheets containing the stamp in a block format can fetch between $15 to $50, especially if well preserved and housed in a clean mount or display page. A key consideration in evaluating this stamp's value is whether it is part of a complete collection set. Many collectors seek to acquire the full range of commemorative Franklin stamps, and having this 50-cent blue version included in such a collection boosts its value. If you happen to own a first-day cover, that is, an envelope bearing this stamp with the official cancellation from the first day of issue, it can add further value. Depending on the design and postal history attached to it, a first-day cover featuring this stamp might range in price from $10 to $75. Let us also consider the power of condition in the stamp world. The value of a stamp rises dramatically if it is in mint never hinged condition, meaning the stamp is unused, has never been mounted with a hinge, and retains its full original gum. If your stamp is postmarked or shows signs of aging, such as yellowing or creasing, its value could be lower. In contrast, a bright, well-centered example with sharp perforations and no signs of handling is highly desirable. If your Franklin stamp meets these standards, you may have something truly special in your collection. It's also worth noting that stamps like this, especially those with classic appearances and famous figures, are becoming increasingly popular in the global market. Collectors from Europe, Asia, and beyond are turning their attention to American historical figures, particularly those associated with politics, communication, and independence movements. This means that international auctions, online stamp shops, and collector networks are seeing increased demand for high-quality versions of Benjamin Franklin stamps, especially those that stand out visually, such as the one we are discussing today. So what should you do if you believe you have a 50-cent blue Benjamin Franklin stamp in your possession? First, examine it carefully under a magnifying glass. Look for signs of condition. Is it unused or used? Is the perforation clean and complete? Is there any visible damage or discoloration? Second, determine if it was part of an official release or if it's a novelty print. Look for catalog numbers if you have access to a U.S. Scott catalog or consult a local stamp dealer or online identification platform. Third, consider getting your stamp appraised, especially if you believe it may be from a limited issue or contains unique features. Professional appraisal can help verify authenticity and potentially increase its resale value. Finally, always store your stamps with care. Use acid-free albums or stock pages, keep them in a cool, dry environment, and avoid touching them directly with your fingers. The smallest scratch, crease, or moisture spot can reduce value. Remember, what may appear like a simple blue stamp to one person might be a hidden treasure to a true collector. And in a world where digital communication dominates, these tangible pieces of the past grow ever more valuable with each passing year. Here at Stamps Old World UK, we are passionate about uncovering the true stories and real worth behind the stamps we often overlook. The 50-cent blue Benjamin Franklin stamp is a beautiful reminder of America's postal heritage and of the men who helped start it all. Whether you collect for history, design, or investment, this stamp is a wonderful addition to any album and serves as a timeless tribute to innovation, freedom, and the art of communication. Thank you for joining us in today's deep dive into the 50-cent blue Franklin stamp. If you enjoyed this video and found it informative, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more episodes just like this one. We explore British rarities, American classics, hidden gems, and valuable finds from around the world, every week. Share your thoughts in the comments, let us know what stamps you'd like to see next, and keep collecting with curiosity and care. This is Stamps Old World UK, signing off until next time, and remember, every stamp has a story.